Good morning, everyone. Let's start now. I think one of the things that has happened is we normally have our session start at about 9:30, so I think we're going to have some late arrivals, and we'll just relax and be patient and let them come in what they do. I'd like to introduce this morning someone that I have been fascinated by the kind of work that she's doing. Dr. Barbra Brewitt is a researcher and consultant, and she received her doctoral degree from the University of Washington Medical School. And she did her postdoctoral work after her receiving her degree with the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. After that work, she received enough notice that she became a guest lecturer in Germany for research on growth factors. And those growth factors affected the immune system and the nervous system and the cellular system, and that's where her research is focused. Right now, she's currently doing research at the John Bastyr College, and she does that on HIV and chronic viral infections. She also sees clients locally and in Arlington. Would you please welcome Dr. Barbra Brewitt.
Thanks, Rich, and I want to thank Danya and Michael and all of you for coming. I'm really excited. This is the first talk I've given to lay people, regular people. So I've been giving lectures at the Bastyr College for my research work and ideas on AIDS and HIV. So today I'm going to talk to you just generally about the immune system and put it in a context of algae whenever possible. So if you turn the slides on here. Oh, to do that, you have to turn the light on. Okay. So I don't know if you've had slide talks before, but I'm going to talk for about 45 minutes, and then what I'll do is demonstrate the kind of work that I do. And because detoxification is an important word that's used with algae and in the general public, I wanted to try to address that. Actual medical doctors don't use the word detoxification. You don't study that in medical school. Nobody knows what that is. Natural medicine talks about detoxification, but again, it's rather rhetorical. It's a word that's used, but when you get down to the scientific explanation of it, people go, well, gee, we don't know what that is. So what I'm going to do today is walk you through some of the ideas about the immune system and the nervous system and explain as best I can what detoxification means after we have this foundation of understanding about the immune system, so that when you're using algae or when you're talking to people about algae, you have a sense of what might be going on in their bodies at the cellular level. I'm also going to talk about a healing crisis. How many people have heard this word? Again, this is something even naturopaths don't know what that word healing crisis is. Some of them firmly believe in it, but they don't know what it is, and many of them have never seen it. I've seen it, I've experienced it, and again, I'm going to talk to you about that in a context of some examples of the kind of work that I do. One thing I didn't actually mention to Rich is I'm also a minister for a whole career, 15 years. I was trained as a minister. I went to the seminary for 4 years. And then I worked with juvenile delinquents in the prison context and also worked with young adults that were on the streets trying to get them jobs. And so I understand disease and health in a context of spirit as well as the physical body. How I got into science and research was that I saw juvenile delinquents becoming sick with cancer. And it absolutely shocked and astonished me. And I wanted to know what was disease. In a spiritual context, there's really two roots of the word disease. One goes way back to oral tradition, where it's an out of balance state between what a person is experiencing at the cellular inside level and what they're seeing or experiencing in the outside world. A schism between those two sets of experiences happens, and the interface is the body, and the body breaks down, and the person becomes ill. And that's the word disease in the more spiritual, common knowledge word. In allopathy, which is what Western medical doctors are, the word disease has evolved depending upon the state of the art, which means that when the bubonic plague happened, disease was defined by rats. Rats are the cause of disease because that was all they knew. Then they discovered that fleas were on the rats, so then fleas were the cause of disease. Then they found out that bacteria were problematic to people, and so they called bacteria as the source of disease. Then they discovered viruses. Then viruses became the cause of cancer, the cause of AIDS, the cause of disease. Then they understood molecular genetics, genes that are in the nucleus of the cell with DNA. So then they defined disease as mutations or changes in the DNA. And so disease from the allopathic point of view is very much determined by the state of scientific knowledge or technology at the time. So it's very evolving. But that spiritual understanding of that break between the experience of the outside world and the inside world has remained constant throughout all time for 3,000 to 4,000 years. So my talk today is called The Immune System, Detoxification and Healing Crisis. I'm going to talk right now about the immune system and the nervous system, and put that in a context of what does this detoxification mean. It has a lot to do with both the nervous system and the immune system. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the spiritual changes that we undergo when we're redefining ourselves in the context of a new life force. The word health actually means a robustness for the world, an ability to respond. Before I really begin, all living systems, of which we are, human bodies, but all living systems have this rather remarkable ability to transform and change the signals from the outside world for how we in our bodies experience them. So that means that in this room, there are literally over 1,000 sets of stimuli, and yet each of us sees this room differently. It would actually astonish you to see how your neighbor is seeing this room and experiencing what I'm saying right now versus yourself. That each of our individual bodies actually changes information, and then we choose through our immune system and through our nervous system how to respond to these stimuli that we allow ourselves to take in. What we put in our bodies, what kind of food we put in, whether it's algae, or whether it's white sugar, whether it's Pepsi Cola, or whether it's wheat sprouts, that actually helps us change the decisions we make on how we feel about the world and how we perceive the outside world and then respond to it. So now I can have the next slide. And if I'm like really way out of if I'm like talking too spacey, or you really wonder what am I talking about, raise your hand. Okay, so I don't want to lose anybody. This paper just came out by Booth and Asperidge in a journal called Advances, which talks about the mind, body, spirit, and psychoneuroimmunology. Are most of you familiar with that term, psychoneuroimmunology? No. Okay, for those that haven't heard the term, it used to be thought that the nervous system was one system, the immune system was one system, and the hormonal system was another system. And that was true up through the 70s. And in the 80s, there were new technologies that allowed us to look at the body in a more sophisticated way. And we began to understand that there's very little separation between the nervous system and the immune system, and that the hormonal system and the nervous system are almost indistinguishable at very many different points. So there became a word, psychoneuroimmunology, to take in the concept that the hormonal system, the nervous system, and the immune system are really one. I'm just going to focus on the nervous system and the immune system because the hormones, which is like insulin, growth factor, growth hormone, thyroid hormones. Are you familiar with hormones? Okay. Those are part of the hormonal system and they're regulated by the nervous system. So the nervous system and the hormonal system are really one. The nervous system and the immune system have many things in common. One of them is it has a very long-term memory. If you were shocked, like if you were in the Vietnam War and your nervous system was shocked by the bombs that it saw, then when you come back, you have that post-traumatic stress syndrome. You come back to the world, and if you see an explosion or 4th of July, your body responds to the signals that you saw when you were in the shock of the Vietnam War. We have a long-term memory. If we were really upset as a child, we remember that as adults, and if there's something that stimulates us, we'll have a similar response. So that's that long-term memory. The immune system has the exact kind of long-term memory. If you had the chicken pox as a young child, you won't never get the chicken pox again because your immune system remembers what that looks like in your body and is able to destroy it right away and prevent a response from ever happening. There's nothing else in the body that has this remarkable long-term memory, and the nervous system and the immune system both have that. They're both very mobile systems. They're not just isolated. The nervous system, people often think about it's in the brain. Well, it's not really in the brain. It's everywhere in the body. You have actually a highway system of the nervous system that traverses everywhere so that you can pick up stimuli, senses. If I touch something here at my finger, it sends a message to my brain, and my brain chooses how it will respond to that. And each of you responds somewhat differently. So it's very mobile, it's very fluid. The immune system is also very similar to that. It's very mobile and very fluid. In fact, people call the immune system a mobile brain. The immune system and the nervous system then receive signals at all the time, and they're constantly deciding what are we going to do with this signal. There's a point where if we get over that post-traumatic stress syndrome and we have recovered from the stress of the Vietnam War, then when we go out in life and we see the 4th of July and all the firecrackers go on, we're no longer stressed in that same way because we've changed, we've evolved. And the nervous system and the immune system are constantly evolving. They aren't just responding to the world. They're actually actively deciding every minute of our day how to be. And that has a lot to do with the food that we put in ourselves. Other things that are similar between the nervous system and the immune system, it's a kind of surveillance. The immune system recognizes what is not the body or what is not self. Like a virus. A virus is not part of our self, and our immune system recognizes that. A bacteria is not self. If we cut ourselves and we get a piece of sawdust in here, it's really critical that our immune system recognize that's not self and find a way to get rid of it, to eliminate it from our body. Equally so, and this is not well understood, is every day, every minute, right this very minute right now, the immune system is going around and recognizing self. It goes to every cell in the body all day long and goes, are you part of, in my case, Barbra Brewitt? And how do I respond to that? It's very active. It's not passive. It's not like we're just tolerate self. Every day we have to go and recognize self. And toxicity is when there's so many poisons in our body that our immune system's ability to recognize self becomes distorted, it's overburdened, and it begins to get confused. So the boundary between what is self and what is not self is obscured, and that is a basis for disease. You lose the robustness for life when you don't have a very clear boundary between what is dangerous to my survival and what is not. And that can be psychological, or that can be very cellular. At the end of my talk, I'm going to demonstrate what I do, which is measure the electrical conductance in the body. We're all an electrical field, and we're a magnetic field. And the signals that are in the nervous system are all electric in nature. I see this picture over there. It's really beautiful. I see your faces. I'm getting a lot of stimuli right now. All of my visual cues are changed into beep, 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 beep. An electrical signal that I then respond to very rapidly. I take it in just like that, and then I make a decision. Am I safe or am I not safe? Are you a friendly audience or are you a hostile audience? And then my nervous system gets into that fight or flight mode, or it gets into love, peace, and embracing. The immune system also is electrical in nature in that it has a cell membrane. Because this concept of cell membrane is important to algae, I'm going to do a little demonstration here. So here's a simple drawing of a cell. It has a nucleus, and that's where the DNA is. And here's the cell membrane. And all of our cells in our body have a cell membrane, and all of these cell membranes have things that are called receptors on them. And when food comes into our body, it stimulates molecules in the bloodstream or outside of the cell to fit these receptors, and that fitting to this receptor changes it, which causes an electrical current to flow across the cell membrane. And that then tells the cell to act in an appropriate manner, either to become more robust and healthy, or it makes them feel sick and weak. So the cell membrane is very important both in terms of electrical signals and then also in terms of food that enters the body or toxins that get into the body. Some of the words that are right here talk about the crossover between the nervous system and the immune system. It used to be the hypothalamus and the pituitary, or organs that are part of the nervous system, and they secrete neurotransmitters, which are signaling peptides in the nervous system, that also affect the immune system. So the pituitary and hypothalamus do more than just affect the nervous system. They affect all the hormones in the body, which are very many glands in the body, and they also affect the immune system. Telling it is should it get into a defensive mode and begin the army attacking because it's in danger? Or, like in the terms of grief, if someone has died, the immune system actually does not work as well. In a grieving situation, people are more subject to feel sickly. Cytokines is a fancy word for growth factors, which is a fancy word for signaling molecules. They're proteins, and they go in the body and they tell the cells to do a lot of different things. Neuropeptides and neurotransmitters are also fancy words, sometimes for amino acid. Like algae has glycine in it, has glutamine in it. Well, glycine is a neurotransmitter that directly affects the nervous system. Glutamine is an amino acid that forms other molecules that directly affect the brain, that also then directly affect the immune system. They form neurotransmitters like GABA, which has a lot to do with the pain response. Then you have autonomic nerves, which affect not only the nervous system, but it has a very direct effect on the immune system. It's that fight or flight response. So that in terms of safety, The immune system and the nervous system are very important. Have you turned the air conditioner down a little bit so it's not?
Do you want it down?
Yeah, it seems like it's getting cold. I'm noticing people putting their coats on.
I didn't turn it down, no.
Okay.
Turn it up.
Oh, the air conditioning up? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I noticed it's getting up soon.
If you go to the next slide. So this is just to recap in scientific terms what's happened. In the 1980s, actually like 1983, business, in terms of what science could do, became very molecular, and genes were understood. So it was a field called molecular genetics was formed. And that field of science resulted in reappraising the interrelationships between cells and how they talk to each other. Growth factor technology, which are biotechnology companies that make all these molecules that we buy at very expensive prices, has been led to the realization that the immune system and the immune response is only a very small part of lymphocytes, which are part of the immune system. I'll talk to you about it in a minute, T cells. And that idea of surveillance, immune surveillance, the body's immune system going around and saying, are you cell or non-cell, actually is much larger than we ever recognized. Immune surveillance is only one part of the body's health. There's actually a much larger sense of well-being than what the immune system can do. And growth factors, these molecules that I am particularly interested in, as well as molecules from the immune system and molecules, neurotransmitters from the nervous system, are very key to health within the human body. People often think, especially with AIDS, that to cure AIDS or to get better, you have to just feed the immune system and then everything will be all right. What I really want to drive home to you today is that the food we eat, algae, which is a very complete food, feeds the entire body and gives all of the cells in the body an opportunity to support the immune system and, in fact, help us to evolve to a higher level of robustness for life, which is health.
Could you repeat that again, please?
Okay. Which part?
You said about AIDS. People,
Okay. In general, when you're talking about viruses or in the example of AIDS, people often think that what you need to focus on is the immune system, which is commonly thought of as our first line of defense. What we're really realizing in the 90s and in the late 80s is you cannot separate the immune system from the rest of the body. And therefore, if the immune system in AIDS becomes damaged, or an autoimmune disease such as lupus, or asthma, or diabetes, dealing with the immune system is not enough. And in fact, sometimes dealing with that can only aggravate the problem. What you need to do is think of the immune system in a much broader sense and support the health of the cells in the body, like in the nervous system and all the cells in the organs. And that then supports the immune system. So that we're really a hologram. And you're familiar with the word hologram? Okay, great. Next slide. I'm going to talk to you now about the lymphoid system, which is the big word for the immune system.
Can I back you up a minute? Can you explain neuropeptides?
Neuropeptides are neurotransmitters. They're protein molecules that are very small. They have only 5 amino acids sometimes. And neuropeptides travel through the nervous system, is the old thought, and cause signals like the fight or flight response. After a neuropeptide is fired, like GABA, it tells us to deal with our pain by feeling it or not feeling it. Okay, neuropeptides are signaling molecules for the nervous system that are electrical in nature and cause us to make different kinds of responses. I can move my hand. I feel pain. I feel love. I become afraid. All of those emotions or nervous responses are from neuropeptides. And now we know that neuropeptides affect the immune system. Okay, that there's actually receptors in different nervous immune system organs, like the spleen, for receptors for something like nerve growth factor, which is a neuropeptide. What's the immune system doing with the receptor for that neuropeptide? Well, it's because the immune system responds to our fear level. Okay, so the nervous system and the immune system are very intricately involved. Rich.
Does the brain also have receptors for neuropeptides, and they form a different function in the brain? For instance, mental stimulation as opposed to an immune response because of neuropeptides.
Okay, neuropeptides, why don't we go back a slide or two? One more. The immune system signaling peptides are often called cytokines. Those receptors are all over the nervous system. So when the immune system elicits a response, it elicits a response in the immune system, but there's receptors in the nervous system, so it causes our brain to respond differently. Similarly, neuropeptides in the nervous system there's receptors all over the immune system for these neuropeptides, so that when we're afraid, when we're grieving, our immune system changes likewise. So that the clear-cut definition that you tend to be taught is not very clear-cut anymore. Okay, 2 slides. All right, the lymphoid system is a very intricate network throughout the system, throughout the body. And it has key tissues and organs. And one of them is the bone marrow. The immune system cells are called white blood cells, and they're also called lymphocytes. And lymphocytes and red blood cells, which are in the blood, originate in the bone marrow. That's why bone marrow and bone marrow transplants or radiation is so important, because it affects the very core of our being. The major organs in our body for the immune system is called the thymus, which is right around the heart area. So if you touch on just above your heart, that's where your thymus is located. And it gets smaller as we develop, but it does not become inactive at any time. And this is a training ground for our body to know what is cellular self. Excuse me, I'm standing in front of you. Now am I standing in front of you? The T cells, or T lymphocytes, stand for thymus. They go from the bone marrow right to the thymus. And in the thymus, it teaches you what is self. And if you don't learn, if these cells do not learn what is self, they're killed in the thymus. And it's amazing to immunologists that 90% of the cells that go into the thymus never go out, because they're not capable of clearly recognizing self. It's very important to know, is this cell a healthy cell? Is it representative of Barbra Brewitt, or is it not? And if I can't tell the difference, that cell will be destroyed. The spleen, which is right here in your rib cage, so everybody, just to wake you up, it's right on your left-hand side. I want you to know where it is, because it's very important. It's behind the stomach, and it's actually a very large organ. People think of the spleen as about, people describe it to me, it's about this big. Well, it's not. It's this big. Very large. It's very important. Blood courses after it goes from the heart, the blood goes to the lungs, which are not shown right here, to get oxygen. And then from the lungs, it goes into the spleen. That's the first place it goes, after it goes through the aorta and down. And in the spleen recognizes, is this clean blood, or does it have an infection in it? Is it toxic? So the health of the spleen is critical, and the health of the blood is critical for how well a person feels. I'm going to show you the spleen, an example of the spleen a little bit later. The spleen has 2 kinds of cells in it. Well, it has many kinds, but 2 basic cells, B cells and T cells. The The B cells I'll explain in a minute, but they go through the blood and tell the blood how clean it should be. So the thymus and the spleen and the bone marrow are the largest organs that we think of when we think of the immune system. There's also organs like the tonsils and the adenoids, which are very small, but they also have a lot of lymphocytes in them, T cells and B cells. Then in the small intestines, you have a very diverse set of nodes, which are called Peyer's patches, and that's everywhere in the small intestine, so that when you digest food, the body is constantly going, is this self or non-self? Is this a poison? Is this a chemical? Should it be destroyed? Or is it okay for me to incorporate into my holy being of beings because of the body?
Very often you hear about a spleen being removed. Damage. Is that deleteriously affect the rest of
Yes. How many of you have your spleens removed? Well, I want to tell you, it's very common. Doctors don't understand the spleen, so they take it out. If you're in a car accident, often the spleen is punctured, and they don't know the function of it, so they take it. It's like the appendix, which is part of the immune system. How many have your appendix removed? Doctors don't know what it means, take it out. You don't need it. You can live with. We know you can live without it. To them, to a doctor, that means you don't need it. Take it out. I come from a different school of thought. The spleen is fundamental for the health of our being. And if we don't have a spleen, it means that the burden is placed in other areas of the lymphatic system, and you need to really watch your diet and be, really careful with yourself. Everywhere in the body, there's these tiny, tiny little structures called lymph nodes. We have a lot of them in our neck. We have them everywhere in our body. We have them down in our leg. We have them in our groin area. We have them under our armpits. We have them in the breast area, men and women. We have them in the stomach area. They're everywhere. I'm going to show you a lymph node in a minute. And then we have this vascular system, which is not blood. The lymphatic system is its own highway. 98% of the immune system travels in the lymphatic system. Only 2% out of 100% is in the blood system at any one time. So when we take blood tests, we get an idea of what 2% of the immune system is doing. That's now a big problem in AIDS because they realize people can be HIV positive and have illnesses that the doctors can't recognize. I'm sure you've all heard people say, I went to the doctor, he said I was fine. There's nothing wrong with my blood test. And yet you know you're in pain. And yet you know there's something wrong. Science, to this day, doesn't know how to measure what's going on in the immune system without killing you. Or taking out your spleen, and then they don't know really how to look at it. What I'm going to show you today, actually, we have ways to measure what's going on in the lymph nodes and in the lymphatics and in the spleen and the thymus. So this is a really new technology that allows us to understand what's going on.
Could you repeat 90%?
98% of the lymphocytes in our body travel in the immune system. Only 2% of the lymphocytes in our body are actually in the bloodstream at any one time. In the course of looking at this diagram, vasculature, which is arteries and veins, run right side by side with the lymphatic system. And then right next to that is the nervous system. So there's really, I was in the anatomy department and I dissected cadavers, dead bodies, and looked at vasculature, lymphatic veins, and nervous system. And it's all right next to each other. They're separate highways. The lymphatic veins are exclusively for lymphocytes. The blood has lymphocytes, red blood cells, and neurotransmitters in it. And the nervous system has exclusively neurotransmitters. But now we know that hormones affect those neurotransmitters. And we know that immune signals also affect that. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, let's just watch them if I stand here. This is a complex slide, so try to just follow me. Don't let your eye read all of this. what I want you to focus on right now is right here. This is the immune system, which is a very complex system. It has different kinds of cells. Oversimplification of it is in these two ellipses. We have two kinds of lymphocytes. We have what's called B cells. If you see the word antibody, the B in it, it's B cells. And they go in the bloodstream and secrete these antibodies. Do you know what an antibody is? Does everybody?
Pretty much.
Well, but why don't you explain it? Because maybe we know, but we don't know.
Right. Great.
We think we know.
So, if you have a foreign substance in your bloodstream, it has a particular shape to it, and the body knows how to recognize that shape. And you have these B cells that are B lymphocytes. They go in the blood, and they're presented a part of this, and they will secrete millions and millions. Literally, one cell secretes millions and millions of antibodies. And these antibodies fit right on different parts of this foreign molecule. And they saturate it. And in fact, they puncture holes in it and kill it. And that causes it then to be secreted out, be detoxified. Secreted out of our bodies through elimination organs. And I'm going to talk about the major elimination organs in a minute.
How are the antibodies related to the white blood cells?
B cells, which are part of what's called humoral, or the blood system. Humoral immune system is the B cells, and they secrete these antibodies. So the B cells get information about what is not self, and their response is to make these molecules that then surround this foreign substance, kill it, and cause it to be excreted out of the body.
And are the B cells the white blood cells?
Yes, white blood cells means lymphocytes.
Okay.
And there's two kinds of lymphocytes, B cells and T cells. The T cells stand for T thymus. They're derived from the thymus. And what they do is, these cells' responsibility is to go to every cell and tissue in the body and walk through that tissue all the time and go, are these cells that I'm seeing normal for myself, Barbra Brewitt, or do they look somewhat wrong? And if they look a little bit wrong, like maybe they're cancer cells, or maybe they're infected with a virus, there's something not right, they're killed. That's how important that recognition. There's a very sharp boundary in a healthy person between what is a healthy-looking cell and what is a poisonous, toxic, disturbed cell. And if a good robust immune response is to kill anything that doesn't look right and get it out of the body as fast as possible.
Well, does it ever make a mistake?
Yes. When sugar, let me just give you the example of sugar, for instance. When we eat sugar, it causes some other cells in the body, in the immune system, to signal these cells inappropriately, and they don't have a sharp boundary. They become drunk. There's some cells that are called neutrophils. Sugar makes neutrophils sick. These neutrophils bump into cells, and they're a little bit not doing their job, and they pour these enzymes on the cell, which causes the cell to open up. The T cells come along and go, this cell doesn't look right, kill it. And what you get is an autoimmune response. Lupus. Some people think arthritis, diabetes, asthma. You get autoimmune, which means you attack yourself. T cells in AIDS, that's what AIDS is. AIDS is the body can no longer tell what is self and non-self. The virus has taken over. The person becomes toxic, and the body and the nervous system destroy itself. The immune system and nervous system are continually going, who am I? What signals out here am I taking in, and how do I respond to those signals? We can change and monitor the health of our bodies by what we eat. Okay, just because I'm at this algae talk, I will underline, algae has neurotransmitters, perhaps even some growth factors. It stimulates the immune system in a very healthy way when done properly. And the person becomes robust. In a spiritual way, for me, because I'm very spiritual, algae it's very spiritual. It causes me to be happier in life. I go, wow, I walked in this room 3 years ago and I would have been depressed, and now I'm like, there's something really great going on here. Okay, it's because I'm not eating sugar, so I don't have drunk cells going around knocking into myself. I have healthy cells that go, this is music to my ears. Okay, so there's 2 cells in the immune system, B cells and T cells. There's also something called macrophages. And again, I've been reading the algae literature. Macrophages are affected by algae to become more healthy. And macrophage is very important. I'm going to talk to you about 10 minutes about that. The hematopoietic system just means blood making. That's the bone marrow system. This is what makes red blood cells, and this is what makes white blood cells. And the neuroendocrine system is the nervous system and the hormonal system. So that's just, the old idea used to separate the nervous system from the immune system, and what I've just been talking about all morning so far is that those aren't separated. Okay, next slide. All right, we're going to zoom down now. I showed you a large picture of the body. I talked about the thymus and the spleen and the lymph nodes. So zoom down in your mind to this diagram of this teeny little lymph node that might be in your neck or anywhere in your body. And it's important to understand this because this is important to the whole concept of detoxification. When something poisonous gets into our bloodstream, there's cells in the body, macrophages, that immediately recognize that it shouldn't be there, and they swallow it. And then they swim to the lymph nodes. They swim out of the bloodstream, through the lymphatic system until they get to the first lymph node that they can find. And they come in right here. They digest it up and they spit a little teeny molecule of it on the surface, and that they present it to the outside of the lymph node. Has an area where the B cells live, B lymphocytes live. And these B lymphocytes have a long-term memory, so they can tell when the macrophage presents it to them, have they ever seen that before or not? And so this solid circle becomes very activated, and 10 to the 20th, the cells begin to divide that many times, 10 to the 12th. A million of millions. And the immune system has this enormous capacity to mount an army against this foreign invader. Something is in the blood. Immediately, the immune system goes into attack. After these B cells are activated, this area has the T cells in them. So these macrophages are swimming in here and they're stimulating the T cells so that the T cells begin to divide 10 to the 12th times, a million of millions. So that all of the cells now can respond to this teeny little molecule. So that this area, this macrophage, chews up this and presents this little teeny thing. And all the B cells secrete these antibodies that will attach to that and kill it. And if any of them got into the cells, the T cells go into every organ in your body, every cell in your body, and they go, is there anything foreign here? Because if it is, I'm going to kill it. And this is what I'm really looking for. So it's very specific. So after about 48 hours of seeing something poisonous in the bloodstream, millions, trillions of cells swim out of the lymph node into the lymphatic net. And the first place they go is to the thoracic duct, which takes them into the bloodstream so that they can go through the heart and make sure the heart is protected first. And then they go to all the other organs in the body and kill there's this massive killing, and you feel sick. You know why you feel sick? You're having this amazing change going on. You think you have, oh, I've got a headache, or I feel really tired, so I think I'll lay down and drink water. Well, the reason you're doing that is your immune system is really working as hard as it possibly can. And where it goes after the thoracic duct is it goes through the lymphatic system, and there's an area right here called the cisternae chyla. It's on the left side, not the right side, just the left side. And it's the interface between the vascular system and the lymphatic system. And a lot of my clients will get these terrible pains here. I'm afraid I'm having a heart attack. They're not actually often having a heart attack. Their immune system is backed up. The interface between the blood system and the immune system isn't working, so they feel it. They actually feel pain there. And I have clients that feel things right here. And again, they're afraid they're having a heart attack. And they have a nervous network there with the vascular network. And it's charged, and so they feel something. Okay, let's go to the next slide. The regulation of these responses is very important. You can imagine what would happen if your body was stimulated by mistake. So the body has an ability to control that, and it's called positive and negative feedback. And the simplest way to explain this is to think about the air conditioning in this room right now. If it gets too warm, there's a control unit in the back. So this is a controlled system. And this control unit has a sensor that says, what's the temperature? The temperature says it's getting too cold. The signal is sent and it's amplified many, many times, and the output goes back to this controlling unit, which then turns the air conditioner off so the room won't get too cold. So it keeps driving it, or too hot, excuse me. So it keeps driving it in a positive way. Another human way to understand this is when a person is giving birth, the baby is going down the birth canal. The way the birth canal works is it uses positive feedback to drive the baby through the birth canal. You don't want the baby to get stuck in the birth canal. The nervous system goes, something's here, we better get it out, 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 get it out. That's positive feedback. And it keeps going until there's no more signal. The baby's birthed, everyone's happy, the body changes metabolically and nervously and stops that signal. Negative feedback, as again, if we're looking at a controlling unit, like a heating system, the heating system has a sensor, and it says it's reached the temperature we want it to be. We don't want it to get any warmer. So there's a set point that says 70 degrees is hot enough. If it gets to be 72, an air signal is sent, and that inverts a signal that goes negative, 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 turn off the heat. So it's negative feedback. If we look at the next slide, we're getting sophisticated now. We're going to talk about how this works in the immune system. The immune system has three very important kinds of cells. It has macrophages. This is the picture of a macrophage because it looks different than other cells. We have the T cells from the thymus and the B cells from the spleen. An antigen is a fancy word for these little funny shaped foreign molecules. So they get into our body. The macrophage recognizes it, chews it up, and it causes positive feedback to go to the T cells. The T cells then cause positive feedback, and they tell the B cells, turn on, get excited, and the B cells start producing millions and millions of antibodies. The antibodies cover up the antigen, excrete it from the body, which is negative feedback. There's nothing left to attack, so it stops. What also happens, though, because the immune system has to be so tightly regulated, they send other cells that say, stop the response. We have enough of a response. So after these positive signals are sent, about 12 hours later, some other cells come into the B cells and go, okay, you should have killed it by now, so slow your response down, so it's negative feedback. And the antibodies are not produced anymore. Now, if that's not working, let's say this system isn't working, which in AIDS and in any autoimmune disease, this system is not working properly. The on and off is not right, and that's why we hurt ourselves. The body's immune system is too toxic, and that sharp boundary of what is self and not self is very fuzzy. So the response isn't working right. The immune system has some other strategies, and one of the strategies is that each of these antibodies, let's see, let me try this. Here's a T cell, and here's a foreign molecule in our body. No, here's a foreign molecule in our body. These B cells secrete antibodies. An antibody looks like this. It covers up this foreign body, and it is secreted out. Now the body is so exquisite. It's never seen this molecule, because this molecule was just produced by this B cell. Just produced by the B cell. The body's immune system goes, we haven't seen this before. This is non-self. So it will make another antibody to kill this in due time. It takes a while. It takes a couple days, maybe 3 days, maybe a week. But if this B cell keeps secreting these first antibodies, some other B cells will come in to form more antibodies to stop this response. So you get a wave of a response. And again, sometimes when people are detoxifying, they're going, I felt really great, then I felt really sick, then I felt better, and 2 weeks later I felt sick again. That's this response. It's called the idiotypic network system. It's a very important concept in immunology. And would you make the next slide?
So the body's reacting to normal tissue, which causes the antibody.
The first antibody is because there's something foreign in the body. Every antibody, newly secreted, has never been seen by the body ever before. It's new. And so the body has a check on that to say, we're not going to let those antibodies go on forever. We're going to stop them. Yes. So it's positive and negative feedback all the time until the body goes, everything is okay now. Then everything slows down. There's a web. Let me try to explain this. This is a very sophisticated concept. There's a web in the body. So this foreign molecule comes into the bloodstream, and a lot of different B cells secrete antibodies. Each of these antibodies will stimulate another set of B cells to secrete more antibodies, which will then cause some other cells to secrete some more antibodies. And after 3 waves, the system should stop. In a normal situation, it will go stop. So you'll have a little wave effect just to make sure everything's taken care of, everything's back to normal. There are people that don't have that, and in certain situations, it causes a wave, 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 it causes a wave. And what that will look like in the body, and in a healing crisis, and also probably through the detoxification system, if we're looking over time, and we're thinking about the number of antibodies that are produced, the first foreign molecule will create a very large antibody response, which will then stimulate a smaller response a little bit later, 2 weeks later maybe, which will then secrete another response, and then it should dampen. Some people, it's altered. And what happens is that the response causes a high response, which causes a high response, which causes a high response, which causes a high response. The person begins to have what's called an autoimmune problem. Because their own body will not stop. Their body is confused.
This is the case in lupus.
That's right. This is the case in AIDS.
Right.
This is the case in autoimmune diseases. And what you want to do is begin to re-educate the nervous system and the immune system that they're safe now. They don't have to keep mounting that kind of response.
And you're going to teach us how to do that today.
Right, exactly. I was just going to say, I could say that in 3 minutes. And this takes 60, 70, well, I don't know, Zen masters. It is a true miracle, and for me, it's where spiritual comes in. But what we put in our body helps us
Well,
do
we're
that.
dealing with a person who's very spiritual to begin with. So the chances are we can get this under control.
Probably.
That's what I want to hear.
It's a very complex problem.
Talking about the T-cell counts and what step into the T-cells.
Oh, we're getting really complicated now. Okay, I actually have a whole talk on that, but in the immune system, you have a lot of different kinds of T cells. So in AIDS, when people talk about the T cells, they don't mean the T cells, they mean the T4 cells, which are the helper cells. When you hear them, and this is also CD4, or when you hear 8, CD8, that means the suppressor cells. So there's all kinds of CD56. There's a lot of different kinds of T cells. They all have different little cell surface markers. When they mean the T cell count is going down, a normal T cell count might be 1,200. When HIV or other autoimmune problems are happening, the virus or whatever becomes very high in the person. The amount of virus that's allowed in the bloodstream is there. The immune system isn't chasing it out. And with AIDS or HIV, the T cells begin to die. They don't know exactly why, so the T cell goes down. So you hear about people that have 10 T cells. It doesn't mean 10 lymphocytes, it means 10 cells that have this marker. And when they go down really low like that, the NIH believes that people then die. They say when your T cell count goes down to 100, in 2 years you'll be dead. I have a totally different philosophy about that. I think there are things that can make the T cells go up, but it's not a trivial question.
So then they treat the AIDS patient or HIV patient with strong antibiotics, strong antifungal drugs, so that in turn suppresses the immune system more.
It confuses that boundary, what is self and non-self.
I just have a question. When you talk about the T cells, how do they determine the count of the T cells in blood tests? Does that mean again that only 2%?
That's right. That's right.
Can you repeat the question, please?
The question was quite perceptive. When people commonly say your T cell count has gone down, what does that mean? Well, what it means is that they took a blood test. So they're really evaluating that 2% pool of lymphocytes in the bloodstream, because they can't measure what's in the lymphatics. They can't look at the 98%. They look at that 2%, and they say that that 2% T cell count, or CD4 count, has gone down, 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 down. And that's
If you measure what's in this
It took years to understand how to test blood. And we don't know how to stick a needle in and draw out white blood cells. Yeah, you damage the tissue.
So the algae itself actually has an immune system, doesn't it? Would have to.
It doesn't really have that kind of an immune system. It has very primitive. It doesn't have the T cells and the B cells and a long-term memory. It has cells that are called phagocytic. They swallow up, they have enzymes.
But it's the nature of the algae to survive and help other living species survive. So it's the DNA in the algae that actually goes in and re-educates you. Is that right?
Not necessarily.
No?
The algae has it has glutamine, glycine, and may have some growth factors in it. It has chlorophyll in it. It has the nutrients that allow the blood, the lymphocytes, the nervous system, and the cells to respond to those nutrients in an appropriate manner. The DNA may be important to algae. Technology hasn't really evaluated that yet, and they don't even understand the DNA in our own body. They're trying to understand the DNA in HIV, but it's it's more complicated than that. I won't go into it right now.
Back to the model bit, how the vaccine works in is that the vaccine is an antigen,
That's right.
and then when the antibodies
The idea,
attack it, then it takes the memory into the cell so that it remembers again if it has something.
the whole strategy with a vaccination is you take a little bit of the substance, like a smallpox vaccine. I think they don't do those anymore, but smallpox vaccine, they take a little bit of smallpox, they kill it, and then they inject it into your body. It's dead, but it has these foreign molecules. And the immune system goes, oh my goodness, what is this? This is not self. And it mounts a response. And then the body remembers that forever, supposedly. So that if you ever see the smallpox, your body already knows what it looks like, so it'll kill immediately and never get it. That's the whole theory. But it is involving the immune system directly.
So what's the process exactly that goes the antibody getting there and getting this response under control and getting to the memory?
Okay. Let's see. We're in the body. Okay, this is the body. This is the bloodstream. This is a foreign bacteria. Okay, or it's a vaccination, it's something. It enters into the body, and you have these macrophages and B cells. Here's what a macrophage looks like. This macrophage and this B cell have never seen this before. And so they put up an alarm system and they go, this guy swims over to it and swallows it up. Like that. And then it spits it out on the slide. What's the next slide? No. I'll show you it in a minute. It swallows it up and it spits out a little particle of this. It cuts it up. It spits it out on its surface and it swims over to this B cell and this T cell and it presents it. So this macrophage presents this little molecule to this T cell receptor. And this T cell receptor goes, activate, start dividing and make products that will kill this. And this B cell likewise is activated and then starts secreting antibodies that will cover up this surface and kill it.
So that's happening in the lymph nodes.
That's right. As soon as something enters into the bloodstream that is poisonous, it's within 24 hours, it's carried into the lymph nodes. So that the lymph nodes can educate all the B and T cells to mount the armies to get rid of it in the bloodstream and in the cells. Okay, we'll keep talking about this as we go through the slides.
Well, it sounds to me like if you're overworking it by your diet, you're overworking this, isn't that one of the causes of the
Yes.
failure of the immune system?
That's right. I mean, we live a very long time. We start out extremely healthy. Most of us are given that health, and our immune system does have some genetics to it. So what your mother did, what your father did, there is some genetics that are important to what you're born with. But the immune system and the nervous system are very healthy, and we can abuse it for a very long time before you actually see disease. But you cannot avoid it. And you may age much faster. And you can certainly help it. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I've been talking about these macrophages quite a bit, so I want to just go through a little bit what a macrophage is and where they live. Macrophages start out in the bone marrow, and they go through many stages of differentiation or becoming specific. They become what are called monocytes, and they go out of the bone marrow and they go into the bloodstream. Many of them travel in the bloodstream and in the lymph nodes for the rest of their life. But there are many of them that swim to specific organs and tissues in our body and live there forever. They become resident there because these tissues and organs are so important to our well-being. So this, where macrophages live, is the connective tissue. They live in the liver, they live in the lung, they live in the lymph nodes, the spleen, the bone marrow, in the pleura, which surrounds the lungs, and the peritoneum, which is a bag, kind of an apron that surrounds what we call the gut and the abdomen. And they live in the nervous system, and they live in the bone tissue. It's very interesting that all of these are organs of elimination. So the liver is very, very critical to detoxification because it's the macrophages that are the first line of recognizing something foreign and helping us get rid of it. If we don't get rid of it, we become toxic. The liver, the lung, the air we breathe, what's around us. We have macrophages there all the time looking at what is good, what is not good for us. The lymph nodes I talked about, the spleen I talked about, the pleura and the peritoneum. A lot of times people get inflammatory responses in their pleura, their lungs. They have this terrible aching. The macrophages are trying to do a job to detoxify us. The peritoneum, a lot of people say they have a stomach ache, chronic stomach ache. It might not be the stomach. It's actually the peritoneum. And blood tests don't know how to test the peritoneum. This technology that I'm using, actually, I have measurements that I can measure things in the peritoneum. So macrophages are not only swimming everywhere in the body, but they're living everywhere in the body. They're in the skin as well, which isn't mentioned here. So people get hives and skin rashes. There's something going on with the immune system in the skin, and the immune system is the macrophage there. In the eye, there's macrophages living in the eye. There's macrophages living everywhere. Go to the next slide. Macrophages secrete a lot of very important substances, and so I'm going to talk to you about it just briefly. Growth factors are these protein molecules that signal cells in the body to be healthy or not be healthy. It also stimulates the immune system, and it also stimulates the nervous system. Primarily, people think about macrophages affecting lymphocytes only, and that is not true, not a bit. They secrete enzymes that, if a virus enters a body or a bacteria, these enzymes puncture holes in the cell wall and then kill the bacteria. They have a way to get into it. The cell wall is what is used to protect us. So when macrophages secrete these enzymes and pierce cell walls, they allow those cells to die. Now, if the macrophage is drunk or confused and it kills our own cells, those cells die. HIV affects macrophages a lot, and that's part of the problem with the AIDS infections, not just the lymphocyte. Macrophages secrete proteins that allow poisons to get out of our bodies. They aggravate and make what's called complement. That gets out of our body. They secrete a substance that causes us to have a fever. Alpha-2 macroglobulin is what makes our have a fever response. They also secrete substances that cause inflammation in our body. And they also secrete superoxides hydroxyl radicals. Now, you've all heard of coenzyme Q10 because it's an algae product. That has some of the oxides and free radicals to kill the free radicals that can cause cancer or poisons to accumulate in the body. So macrophages normally, to keep a macrophage healthy, it does a lot of wondrous things. Next slide. This is an example of a virus infection. So a virus, which is right here, swims and it punctures the cell wall right here, and it leaves part of it on this outside, but it also comes in and leaves DNA particles in what's called the cytoplasm of the cell. This is the nucleus of the cell, and this is the cytoplasm of the cell. And it also gives these nucleic acids to go inside the nucleus and incorporate into our identity as self, as DNA. And once the virus causes our DNA to look differently, it's very hard for our body to figure out what is self again. It's a whole re-education process. Then the virus has all these little poisons that get into our cells. This is called toxic. And then when this cell divides, which it does every couple of days, we get two more cells that are infected. Where there was one, there was two. In the immune system, where there was one, there's now 10 to the 20th. That's why when Epstein-Barr virus or HIV virus infects the immune system, it's such a serious problem. Because it's not just simple cell division, it's exponential cell division. Here is the picture that you wanted to see, I think. Here is what's called an antigen, something foreign in our body. This is an antigen-presenting cell, which means it's a macrophage. There are other cells in the immune system that are called antigen-presenting cells. But basically, the macrophage swallows this up. It secretes those enzymes that digest this. It cuts it in half, like Susan's. These enzymes cut it up, and it chooses what little teeny particle to spit out. And it spits it out in the context of self. That means that the macrophage has a little molecule on it that says, I'm Barbra Brewitt, don't kill me. But now what it does is it's very special. It says, I'm Barbra Brewitt, and Barbra Brewitt doesn't like this little molecule. And so the T cells recognize Barbra Brewitt, and they go, oh, I like you. And they go, but what's this? And so they talk to each other, these two cells, and the T cells go, I'm going to kill everything that looks like this. And that's how the immune system starts getting activated. Now, if the immune system doesn't work properly, this is a theory that's popular right now with HIV. There's things that are called super antigens. For some reason, this macrophage is sick. It's not paying attention, and it doesn't swallow it. And instead, this antigen binds to this T cell receptor, because that's what HIV virus does. It has a binding site right here. And this binding site, which is also right here, is then activated because it's recognized the macrophage. And it starts causing the T cell to be activated against nothing. So 10 to the 20th cells mount their armies ready to kill. And they are looking, and they can't find. And they get confused, and they start shooting themselves. And that's how they die. So the idea is that the T cell, because it's infected with HIV virus, the virus has fooled it. And it's caused it to become activated. And the activation destroys self, which makes the virus stronger. That sharp boundary has been destroyed. And the body is in serious trouble, and there's a war going on. And who wins the war is critical to life.
You said the cells talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Would a lack of neuropeptides cause the miscommunication amongst the cells, or if the neuropeptides only pertain to nerves?
No, neuropeptides pertain to the immune system as well.
So
And
could
current-
the miscommunication going on between cells
Yes.
if you're lacking neuropeptides?
Yes, I can't say that from experiments in the lab at the National Institutes of Health because nobody's done those experiments yet. That's the research that I'm working on. I have some preliminary evidence that suggests exactly what you're saying. That there's neuropeptides that can actually help rescue this very serious problem. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So I want you to remember the immune system detoxification. And I'm going to tell you what I think detoxification is. That's what you all came here for. First, I'm going to explain what's going on with HIV or an autoimmune viral disease. What happens is you have the vasculature and you have the lymphatic system. You have the lymph nodes. If there's a viral infection, the body in its normal state takes the poisons and it puts it into the lymph nodes where they can be destroyed. If they're not fully destroyed, they sit there. In HIV, they're not fully destroyed. In Epstein-Barr, they're not fully destroyed. They sit there. And if the immune system in the body is not properly nourished, it starts breaking down. It cannot hold up against this constant assault of non-self. And actually the tissue begins to die. And as the tissue dies, this net that catches and traps this HIV molecule begins to fall apart, it disintegrates. And the virus goes out of the lymphatic system, back into the bloodstream. And the virus takes over because the first line of defense has been broken. Once it's in the bloodstream running free, where there's only 2% of the lymphocytes, and those aren't properly working because the 98% are properly working, it goes into the cells. So now you've got HIV in the lungs, you've got it in the heart, you've got it in the kidneys, you've got it in the large intestine, you have it in the small intestine, you have it in the skin, you have it everywhere in your body, wherever you're weak. And the body begins to be sick, and that's toxic. And then you die. Detoxification. This is what it is. Toxins come out of the cells into the bloodstream. From the bloodstream, it goes to the immune system. And the immune system pulls the toxins out and kills them because the immune system is strong. So it's what direction is it going? In toxic responses, poisons are coming out of the lymphatics because the lymphatics are not strong. They're going into the blood and then into the cells. Detoxification, they're coming from the cells back into the blood where the lymphocytes can get a hold of them and draw it all back into the immune system to protect the blood, which can now be clean, and the organs, which can now be clean. And the immune system will destroy it in the lymphatic system. In the middle process, you have toxins in the bloodstream. They both look identical. You go to a doctor and he runs a blood test and goes, boy, you look sick. You've been eating algae for a month and you go, how can my blood look so sick? Well, the reason is you've just cut it mid-cycle. It's trying to get back to the lymphatics because hopefully your immune system is healthy enough to kill it. Once it's killed, it wants to come out your lungs, it wants to come out your large intestines, it's got to go through your liver. You have to have your organs of elimination very, very healthy to detoxify. But part of the process is it's going to go through the lymphoid system first. Is that pretty clear? So which direction are you going? And only you know what your history has been. So people get very confused because they go, oh, I feel worse than ever. Why am I doing this to myself? Well, you're doing it because health is a spiral. We move from a state of being either down or up. We don't stand still. Every time we put food in our mouth, we're giving ourselves an opportunity to get healthier or to get sicker. That's the way it goes. You're either moving up or you're moving down. In that spiraling, you're going to touch base with old problems. Because the body is constantly cleaning itself. It's constantly redefining itself. And it's up to you to trust the process. A healing crisis, because it involves not only the immune system, but the nervous system, has a very emotional component to it. A lot of my clients will go, wow, I've been feeling really great because the immune system is really healthy. It's really ready to do a cleaning job. And then they go, oh, man, I'm having these memories of when I was 14 years old and I wrecked a car, I stole this car, I did something. All these things come back to you as vivid as if it was right now. You know why? Because it is right now. It's coming up for a refresher course. And you can make a new decision. You can decide, I'm not going to respond the way I used to respond. I'm not going to go drink. I'm not going to have a nervous breakdown. I'm going to take it in differently and choose differently. And that's what healing crisis is. Your body at the cellular level is changing. And you'll go through emotions and spiritual changes that remind you of something old. Or you have now more information. You've changed. So the past event won't stimulate you in the same way. And a healing crisis is if you decide to do the same thing. If you decide to get drunk again, or if for whatever reason you can't quite hold it, you have a nervous breakdown again. Don't give up hope. Just means you didn't quite make it that time. You made one step. Maybe you watched it go on consciously instead of unconsciously. And it'll happen again and again and again. Each time, you're healthier. Each time you have the opportunity to be different.
Does that include all diseases we've had?
A lot of times,
That's what it's called, retracing.
right, retracing and healing crisis, you often go through the old diseases or sicknesses that you didn't fully get closure on. You know that repeated autoimmune response I was showing you with the network theory? Sometimes you'll retrace those because those need to be dealt with in a new way so that you stop that repeated response. So you don't always go, you don't have to go through everything you've ever seen before, but those that you have impacted you in a certain way, your nervous system wants to deal with it differently.
You just said before that your organs need to be in good health to help the process of detoxification. Since your liver is a big filter and gets all kinds of other toxins and everything else from the environment and whatever it is that you're putting in and going through your bloodstream. So your liver may not be in as good a shape to help the detox process.
That's
so
right.
what can you do to help your organs to get to the point that's going to help in the detox process?
The detox process and healing crisis don't come easily. You have to, it's like training for a marathon. You have to train yourself. You have to get your body healthy and get those organs of elimination working properly. And your liver is constantly needing help. Chlorophyll is great. Algae is great. Liver flushes are great. Eating the right kinds of food. I don't have a slide for the right kinds of foods, but fresh vegetables, whole grains, organic food, fresh fruits, those are all good. Soda pop, sugar, we know those aren't good. Coffee, smoking, alcohol, French fries, potato chips, pie, ice cream. The obvious. I have my own mother, unfortunately, is 77 years old and she just loves to eat ice cream. Well, unfortunately, she's very toxic. So she has to eat every 3 hours or she feels sick. If you have a client that tells you they have to eat every 2 hours or they feel sick, they could be hypoglycemic, but if they feel sick, they're toxic. And they're feeding the toxicity.
So the very same things that you'll be doing for detoxing could be the same things that are helping to get your organs in good shape.
Right. It's the amount of time that you take in doing it. If somebody, so I have some clients that want to get healthy really fast, so they start doing, 6 capsules of algae, every single day, and they're taking CoQ10, and they're doing this, and they're doing this, and before that they're eating soda pop, sugar. Well, their body, it all goes into the bloodstream, goes into the liver. The immune system is going absolutely wild. They're going, what's happening? There's absolute chaos in my body. The liver is just like going, sludge. I can't filter anything. Everything's backed up. It's too fast. It's too fast.
Does the immune system know the difference between sugars, between types of sugar?
Nobody really can answer that. There's been studies done at Loma Linda Institute where they know that white sugar, sucrose, it's bad news. It's a chemical. White sugar is a chemical.
But then there have been studies that say that honey and some of the others are equally as...
That's right, and that's controversial. Some people respond poorly to maple syrup and they can handle honey. It depends upon your genetics. It depends upon where your stress is. Some people can eat white sugar for quite a few years. It's not simple, and I'm very much a proponent of biochemical individuality. I don't like to make blanket statements. Each of you is rare and special in all the world. And so your body responds in ways that I can't tell yet just by looking at you. Some people can look at your aura and go, oh, too much of this. I can't do that yet. Okay, next slide. Okay, here we come to just the last couple slides, and we're going to take a little break. No, this is right. And then I'm going to show you what I do. This is a graph of examples of measurements that I take in the body. And I'm going to explain this to you and walk through you so you can see the world through my eyes, and hopefully it'll be informative to you. I measure the electrical conductance in our bodies. In our hands and our feet, there's acupuncture points, and those represent the lymphatic tissue, the spleen, the heart, the large intestines, the lungs. Okay, and I can measure the electrical currents that go through that. And there's actually a normal range. There's something optimal. It's 100,000 ohms of resistance, skin resistance. Other parts of the body that aren't acupuncture points are tenfold higher, 1,000,000 ohms of resistance. Well, what I do is this would be the normal or the optimal. I give a variability of 10% up or down. And then what I do is plot the percent change away from this normal. So when I look at these 76 points that I look at with my clients, anything that's in this normal range, I don't even bother to plot. It's great. It's healthy. Hooray. I only plot what deviates from the normal. And then what I do, these are histograms, and things can be higher than normal or lower than normal. If they're higher than normal, it means that you have plenty of chi, that moving vital force. You have a lot of it. In fact, you're overfiring. You're wasting your chi in certain organs and tissues. It's a stress area for you. So you're firing like this when you don't need to be. You're in a fear state all the time when you don't need to be. So when they get higher than 60% in terms of energy flow, it actually suggests that that tissue or organ is inflamed. There's actual a cellular irritation. If it's lower than normal, it means the energy is blocked. The chi is not flowing through there at the rate or at the level that it's supposed to be. It's like dampened. So in this instance, this is a liver point, and this person's liver is blocked. Is there a sludge factor there? Maybe. It's a lower conductance, so that I want to bring the liver point up to normal, and I want to bring all of these points down to normal. Now on this graph, I've coded these so that all of us can understand it more simply. These are histograms, and the ones that have this left narrow diagonals are all related to the immune system. And the immune system here would be the lymphatics, the control point for the lymphatics, or the lymph drainage, how well these lymph nodes drain the toxins out of them. Or the thymus, which has the T cells, that's the training ground for the thymus. And this is also actually a meridian for the thyroid, which is not usually thought of as part of the immune system, but it is an endocrine hormonal gland that some people do think affects the immune system. These blank histograms are related to the nervous system, the pituitary, the nerves in general, and the hormonal and the nervous system interface. The crossbar histogram stand for the organs of digestion, like the stomach, the small intestine, or just organs in general that are metabolizing food. And these final bars over here are all the organs of elimination. They're wide left histograms, so it's the liver, the lung, the large intestines, the skin, the fat stores in our bodies, where we put toxins if we don't know where else to put them. We just put them in our fat. And then when we burn our fat, the liver is involved in clearing those poisons out of our body. The kidneys, the bladder, and the uterus and the prostate are actually organs where bacteria and viruses like to reside. So those I consider organs of elimination as well as having a hormonal component. So in this particular example, this person, all of the organs of elimination are actually stressed. They're either overactive or they're underactive. This presents a problem because if the immune system starts working, and this system is working very hard, this is suggesting that higher than 60%, this is actually almost 78% higher than normal. So the thymus and the thyroid are trying to have the immune system work. They're trying so hard, they're stressed. The lymphatic system is also higher than normal. And the elimination system is not clearing anything. The more that it works, it's like positive feedback. The more that it works, the more toxic the person feels. And the more that it works to get rid of the toxins, the more toxic the person feels. This person actually takes algae, and a lot of times when they take it, they feel sicker. They don't want to take any algae, but they know the algae is good for them, but every time they take it, they don't feel well. Well, what's going on is the organs of elimination are not cleansing. So there's a lot of problem there. So let's go to the next slide. This is an example of a woman who is 75 years old. And when she first came into me, actually she came into me a month before that, she had cancer. They took out all of her lymph nodes in her abdomen. They irradiated her bone marrow and killed the source of making new lymphocytes. It's a really sad story. She also has this really bad case of arthritis, and there's some problems there. So when she came into me, there was elimination problems and a real chronic situation with the immune system. The digestion was actually quite good. This barely deviates from normal in the stomach. The rest of the digestion is good. And most of the nervous system is fine, although the nerves were blocked, again, with the radiation, with cancer, and the kinds of things that were done to her with her lymph nodes gone. It creates a problem there. Well, I had her start taking wheat sprouts and algae, as well as she was taking an arthritis formula, magnesium, phosphorus, and bee pollen. And in this month period, you could see that these organs of elimination cleared up considerably. Most of them normalized. The burden was placed on the fat stores because I told you toxins are often put into the fat. And the kidney. She was taking some heart medication, which also drives the kidney point up. But also the toxins, in a month's time, this is a very rapid detox, actually. And Danya's told me a lot of people that are on wheat sprouts, they actually feel poorly if they detox too fast. This client didn't actually experience that at all. She felt great. She felt better. Because she's been into natural foods for a long, long time. But the point is that the wheat sprouts allowed these organs to do their job and to get the things out. And there was still a burden on the kidney, the bladder to a small extent, and the fat stores. But also the immune system cleared up, and everything in the nervous system became normal, and everything in the digestive system became normal, because that wasn't really where the problem was. That just needed a little bit of nutrients. So that's an example of how rapidly food substances, algae, can make a difference. Go to the next one. This is an example of a 30-year-old man who works for Boeing, and he has chronic sinus problems. The sinuses have never been clear since he's been 7 years old. So his organs of elimination were high. The large intestines, the lungs, the liver, typical organs of elimination. The gallbladder is also an organ of elimination. His immune system was also very, very high. He'd never seen me before, and he went to a chiropractor regularly, but he didn't do anything nutritionally. So I suggested he go on Alpha and Omega, and that's all he did for 1 month. His nose absolutely opened up. He said it could breathe every day out of at least one nostril, and about 80% out of both of them. He was absolutely amazed. energetically, this is what happened. A lot of these organs of elimination came down considerably. Some of them cleared up, and also, well, just in general, just in the number of bars, problematic bars that decreased. Then there was quite a bit of improvement still needed to work on eliminating through the colon. The immune system also cleaned up quite a bit. In 1 month, I don't expect much more than this. This actually looks quite good. If we go to the next slide. Here's an example of someone I saw for 6 months. They started out, this is a person that had Epstein-Barr virus. Yes, this is a person that had Epstein-Barr virus. She came in and she had tendinitis, chronic tendinitis, so she had the flu every 3 weeks. She was exhausted, she was cranky, her nervous system was shot. I don't know if you know the profile for Epstein-Barr and chronic fatigue, but she had it, but it wasn't diagnosed. She came in later and she was looking quite a bit better, but she'd been through her family. I mean, in terms of amplitude, the problem's not as bad. It brought out the chronic, it brought out the blocks. When you start treating something in that spiral, you're drawing out the poisons. We heal from the top of our body down and from the inward bone marrow, nervous system out to our skin. So the chronic problem has to be drawn out. So it's drawn out and measured right here. She started taking an Epstein-Barr virus nosote. The whole immune system was activated. It went into this acute, what is happening here, which is good. Everything in the immune system went on fire. And then everything in the immune system was clear and stable for 2 months. Then she fell in love and went out and started drinking Pepsi-Cola and staying up late at night and went off her diet. And so when she came back, she felt better. But she, we needed to self-correct again. It's not like people change. We're talking about lifestyle changes, so we're not talking about simple things. But it's possible to make dramatic changes in electrical conductance by changing diet, using homeopathic and natural remedies. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, maybe there aren't any more. Is there one more?
That's it.
Okay, well, what I want to do now is have you all take a little breathing break. Then I'll demonstrate this machine, and I don't know if you're all going to be able to see it. If you can't, we can maybe break it up in 2 sections. So, do you have any questions, or do you have a change in the agenda? Are you fine? Okay. I have cards up here, and anything you want to ask me. Electromagnetic, celebrate your body. Right. That's right. And in fact,
I just wondered, is this what you call bioenergetic testing, or what are the bowl machines?
this is a bowl machine. Okay, the history of this particular equipment is called LISTEN, Life Information System, and it's the 10th version. So if you've heard of the Vega machine, the bowl machine, the Intero, the Biopath, the AccuPath, there's a lot of different names for it, but the company that's behind a lot of that is the inventor of this, Jim Clark. And Dr. Reinhold Bohl was a German acupuncturist who was a medical doctor actually in the 40s, but in the 50s he began to realize that acupuncture points, and there's acupuncture points on this hand, there's also points on the feet, there's acupuncture points everywhere on the body. And he didn't have a screen like this, he just had a little ohm meter. This is a sophisticated ohm meter. And what a person does to measure the electrical currents in their bodies, there's this brass bar, and the brass bar connects through this plate and comes back into the hard drive, which has an ohm meter in it. So if a person holds the brass bar in one hand, then I touch a point, I'll get it wet because we're measuring conductance, skin conductance. If I touch a point on my body, I'll get a readout. Now, this readout tells me exactly how much energy was flowing through that particular acupuncture meridian. There's a screen here too, whichever works for you. Okay, so this linearized scale represents how much conductance is being measured. The green area is 100,000 ohms of resistance. At the bottom is a 0, and that's 1,000,000 ohms of resistance. And up at the top, there's no resistance at all. It's conducting absolutely everything, which is in a very hyper state. It's as if everything that you saw drove your body faster, 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 faster. So when it goes up to the red, you're moving into too much conductance. You're taking the signals in your body and you're overfiring. The chi is moving very rapidly through that particular acupuncture point. If it's in the green, the response is just right. If it's in the yellow, it means that you're blocked, you're tired, you're not even able to mount a normal chi response. So I go through different points. This little white dot, I don't know if you can see it, on the thumb here, tells me which acupuncture point I'm actually looking at. The thumb is the lymphatic system. The inner part of the thumb is the lung meridian. The finger is the large intestines. You have the nerves on the inside of the first finger. Then on your ring finger you have circulation. And you can also get a sense of the cisternae chyli, which is the immune system right here. You have allergy points on your middle finger. Then on your ring finger you have general organs, just a general picture of the organs in your body. On the outside of the finger you have what's called the triple warmer in Chinese medicine. The triple warmer is what makes the fire. In Western medicine, those are the endocrine glands. That's the adrenals, the thymus, the thyroid, the pituitary. So the neuroendocrine organs are there. Then you have the heart on the small finger, and you have the small intestines on the outside of the small finger. If we go through all of those points, we have a good profile, but I also go to the toes. And we look at the pancreas, the liver, the joints, the stomach, the connective tissue, the skin, the fat stores, the gallbladder, the kidney, and then the bladder and the uterus or prostate, and then on the other foot is the spleen. So I look at all the tissues and organs in the body, and each of them has a characteristic measurement. Some can be very high, like this. Now,
How accurate is this? And how consistent? How do you compare this to taking blood tests? Because our bodies change
right.
continuously.
Okay, this is thought to be the chi flowing through our body. And the chi is thought to be very continuous in nature. It can change, but in the course of a 24-hour day, certain organs, like the liver, has a certain time when it would be a little bit different. But there's quite a bit of continuity. I've done studies on that. I measured the same person 5 times over a 7-hour period. And there was amazing, 85% was just exactly the same. So it seems to be very deep. It doesn't depend upon your menstrual cycle. It doesn't depend upon if you ate poorly the night before you came in, or if you ate poorly the day before you came in. It's measuring something more vital to our identity. And I'm doing studies right now to see how it corresponds with blood tests. There have been studies done. I've looked at people where I can measure that they have Epstein-Barr virus on this. I send them in for a blood test. They have Epstein-Barr virus. I was able to diagnose a woman with cysticercosis, which is a parasite that gets into the brain. Before the doctors, they just went, I don't know what's wrong with this person. This person has psychological dysfunction. She's just nuts. And I went, I don't think so. I think there's something more going on. So when I picked it up here, I sent her in for a blood test, and that blood test is very unusual. The neurologist was willing, because she thought I was wrong, to go along with it. And it came back that she was positive, and the doctor was furious. Who are you anyway? So I don't have, careful studies have not been published. There's been some studies published. I am very interested to do more careful analysis. And this is very much a new biotechnology. And, you've heard of ball machines.
Is it better than the Vol and Carol and Vega?
This is a higher generation, yeah, it's a more updated. The Vega doesn't have the computer screen on it, and it doesn't have the database library that this does. These machines have been around a long time. None of them are FDA approved. These people have been arrested, thrown in jail. You all know perhaps about Jonathan Wright, what's been going on with him. I'm a researcher. I come from the National Institutes of Health. I'm published. I look very respectable to allopathic eyes. And I plan to bridge what Western science understands and what we know. But you have to collect data. Okay, so I'm trying to find people that help give me that money. I'm applying to the National Institutes of Health for some of that money for alternative medicine with Leanne Standish out of the Vassar College. And we're doing HIV research. And we're actually talking to Group Health, who is very interested in the potential of using this technology. Because we're going to compare blood tests that Group Health does, I hope. Please pray for me tonight. To what I'm doing here. Because we can measure lymphatics here, and they can't. So it has a great potential, but it needs good science. It needs good science, and that costs money. Okay, so what I do, the very first step is I do this diagnostic. I go around to every point and I see, are they high, are they low? And I get a readout which tells not only how high it goes. I don't know if you can see, there's a red bar right here and a blue bar. The red bar is the beginning of the measurement and the blue bar is 1 second later. So it's a specific time period. 5 volts of current flows out of here, and what I'm doing is measuring how much passes through that meridian point. Okay, so then I get a lot of numbers. And those numbers translate into information that gives me a profile of that particular person. So if I was to graph it the way I showed you, some things are too high, some things are too low, and some things, in this person, nothing is normal on these 10, but I could see how much they deviated from the normal. So I have a specific profile. Are there organs of elimination where the problem is? Is it the immune system that's the primary problem? Is it digestion? I get, the very specific information.
How is normal determined?
4 or 5 labs have measured, because they all went, this can't be true. It cannot be true that acupuncture points have a current. So they've measured it in 5 labs, and they found out all of them. 100,000 ohms of resistance.
So that just
That is, in the bell-shaped curve, 85, 90% of the population normal. It's 100,000 ohms of resistance. And in all the clients I've seen, and I've been doing this for 4 years now, that's what I find. So, it's a very good sense of what's going on. So I get this idea of what's going on for that specific person. The second phase of what I do is I go down to different remedies or medicines. And these can be herbs, they can be vitamins or homeopathic remedies. I'm going to have all the cell tech products programmed into this. But if I don't have that, what I can do is look at a product, pretend that there is something in here, and there's nothing. And I would put it on the screen. Any of these have anything in them?
I have them.
Ah, peachy bite, here, hot dog.
You want some?
That's capsules, you want some?
Sure,
The,
okay. So let's,
Alpha and Omega.
I'll have a collection of everything.
Don't get it mixed up.
White one.
I'm not giving them back, so don't be too generous. I'm giving my stock.
Bye, Jack.
Okay, so we got Alpha and Omega, you got.
That's my fix for the day.
What are the red dots?
That's pseudo something or another for my sinuses.
Okay,
And the
Okay.
white ones are aspirin.
so what we do is, this is normally, I have different companies. And each of these has products in it. Like here's a homeopathic list of products. If I went into this, well, what I would do is here's a pancreas point that's 88, way too high. I'm not going to actually use a pancreas point on myself, but I'm going to see if there's anything in this list that would bring this pancreas into normal. It's 88 and I want it to be 45. So I measure a point here and it makes it 40. So it's not 45 or 55, so it's not doing the job. So I go, there's nothing there that I want. If there was, I would go into the list and it lists 1,000 different potential remedies. And I would just, like walking through a database library. All of these have been coded into different electrical signals. And I walk through the database library and in a screen like this, it takes a while to load it up, I would continue to test to see yes and no, and just walk through the list until I came up with that remedy that brought it into normal. Now this, there wasn't anything in this list that brought me into normal, so forget it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put on some algae. Okay, we're going to put on the alpha. And we'll test me. And it brought me right into normal. So that would suggest, when it brings it into the green, that this particular product is excellent for that meridian. It brings me from 88, which is 60% higher than normal, almost 75% higher than normal, down to absolutely normal. So I go to my client or to myself, take this. This is good. Now let's say I went through other areas of the body. And I want to make sure that it was doing the job. Okay, in this case, well, the alpha itself wasn't enough for this meridian. And through this particular meridian, maybe all the others was normal. But I want a client to go out with everything in balance. So I go, well, maybe I need a BB bite because it's past my lunchtime. Okay, you see it brought it down? Didn't bring it into normal yet, but it's much better. So I might go, well, maybe it's not the BG bite. Maybe I need some omega, or maybe I need the BG bite and the omega. So then I'll test the point. It's even better, but it's still not quite normal. Well, maybe I need acidophilus. Actually, I do. I can't. So I'll see, well, is the acidophilus doing it? Well, not quite. Let me see. Now, every time that I give this, I'm actually treating myself. The very first diagnosis was just diagnosis, but now I'm actually treating myself like with acupuncture. I'm giving a signal to the nervous system that is simulating this food or this remedy, whatever it is. So as I treat a client, they feel differently coming out of my office than they did coming in. I'm not just diagnosing them, I'm treating them. Okay, well, over the long term, I go, well, that's not quite it. So I take the acidophilus off, maybe. and I go back to my list and go, I know this list didn't work, but let me see if something else works. So now I'm going to look at this list plus these, because I know the Celtec products are good. Okay, and this comes into the normal. You can't see it, but it's 5254. So then I go into that list, and again, I would walk through it until I kept getting the normal. So it's just yes, no, let's select for what balances the most perfectly. That's very good. And it tells me the answer. So that this is a homeopathic of sometimes environmental sensitivities. And then I would give this person this plus these 3 products and have them come back in a month.
Oh, that was my question. How long would you take that particular?
Most, different clients have different goals, and I try to establish the goals that the people do. As a rule of thumb, I see people once a month. People with HIV, some people I see once a week. There's somebody I've seen that has a very acute leukemia, and I'm actually seeing him twice a week for 3 weeks, and then we'll see how we go. I have some clients I see once every 3 months. I have some clients that I see once every year. Some people have chronic illnesses that they want to get rid of, and they're very willing and able to work on that aggressively. Some people are just wanting to see what their health is, get a sense of which algae products to take, and then I'll see them 6 months from now. Okay, I'll work with the client to see what's going on and what do I recommend, what do they want to do.
If we pass the hat, do you think we could come up with enough money to buy this for you today?
No. If you wanted to buy something like this, they're about $16,000, which is cheap. The Intero and some of the other machines are 20, 24. There's quite a marketplace. But you've got to be a licensed practitioner. Oh no, well, facetiously, I think we should all have them in our homes. I think
wouldn't it be fantastic if you wanted to go to your
That's right.
on the way out the door?
Yeah, because you can also treat yourself.
Sure.
Well, I'm needing to leave. Are there some questions?
What do you charge for a normal?
A normal session? Normal? Pardon?
How long is the session?
A normal session, the first time is probably an hour and a half. With some of my more toxic people, it's usually an hour and a half no matter when I see them. Usually I try to have it in an hour, and I charge $100. And I work
abnormal.
Pardon? The abnormal prices go up to $1,000 for consulting. No, the HIV study that I was gathering some preliminary data, and I was treating these people every single day for nothing. So there's quite a range, but I've been starving for several years now. So my price, $900 to you each visit. Each visit. Yeah. If there is an acute situation, I'll negotiate. Okay. I'm interested in healing. I'm a minister, and I love people. I also am taking care of myself. So there's a certain bottom line.
You're not working with the medical community, well, you are, but I guess as far as insurance coverage or anything.
I've tried. I'm working on it. I am really working on it. This is electrical stimulation, which the insurance companies will cover. However, you have to be a physical therapist. That's the way they interpret it. Naturopaths, you should buy a machine.
Oh, yeah.
Naturopaths are licensed to provide physical therapy, but they don't have the title physical therapist, so insurance kicks it back. So we're going down to Olympia, and we're just going, would you
But if you're a
please?
naturopath that practice chiropractic, and a lot of insurances will cover that.
So if yes, except that chiropractors in this state cannot give homeopathic remedies.
If you're a naturopath that does chiropractic though.
Same thing, it's the exact same catch. A naturopath knows how to do chiropractic, but they're not licensed chiropractors, and insurance will not cover them.
Get around them though. I know certain treatments where if it's covered, if you're in a doctor's office or for example, from a psychologist, the insurance will not cover psychology, but they will cover psychiatry and it's go through the psychiatrist. Why can't this be done through the EDUP system of the med school?
Well, I'm working on everything I can, but right now, actually, I got my degree at the University of Washington. I've showed people what I do, and they think that I'm a little odd with homeopathy, but they don't think this technology is that strange. But insurance companies do. You know, insurance companies are in such a threat right now. We have to have published scientific data, which does not have yet. To do what? That they covered under their pro?
If they get interested, you can say that.
Sure, in 6 years from now.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm a person that sees all possibilities. And I'm radical and I'm very interested, and this is a brand new paradigm. I think it improves the quality of health. It's not invasive. It doesn't have bad side effects. It's very exciting. It takes a lot of work to get this accepted. It's the same thing with algae. You know, algae should be sold in every single store in a way. And people should all recognize the value of it. Exactly. Okay, so there's a lot going on. Okay, I need
Just a quick thing. When people sometimes start on these products, they're doing so well, and it may be a month, 2 months, and then down the road they're hit with this severe detox. Why is it that some people have a detox right away, and some people will take a month or two doing really good, and then they
detox. The cells in the body have a different state of robustness and different genetics, different patterns of lifestyle, and different foods that you put in your body will set the course of how you're going to respond to algae. Some people are in a rather detox situation, so when they take the algae, they feel great immediately. They